All right, Herbert Anderson Borora, the Deputy RCC for Nakawa, is here to acquaint us with what exactly was happening within that clip. A very good morning, Anderson.
Good morning.
What was I looking at in this clip? What was happening?
You were seeing what I was doing my job.
Yes.
And I think we have a very big problem as a country, whereby...
Game was not adhering to the SOPs?
We had tried to talk to them. A number of them had complied. Of course, banks had complied with the issue of adhering to the SOPs. But you see, this is a big facility with non-essentials and essential services. So my problem was the congestion that was in the area, of which I had prior communicated to the management, but I think even management didn't know how to handle it. So my issue was, if we can't, observe SOPs, if we can't give people, hope. You see, my problem is, how do we give everyone hope that what we are doing is to the advantage of everyone? And how do we keep this in one spirit, whereby one doesn't feel deprived of, doing what they are supposed to do? Everyone is at home. And the discussion was, have they not complied? Even those who are at home, given opportunity, they would comply. They would ensure SOPs are observed, they would ensure that, but the issue we had here was, how do we reduce on the congestion? How do we make sure that Sarah, Anderson, and everyone who are working together, they break the issue of the transmission? That was the problem.
And that's why we are asking right here on the morning show. What are some of the issues within your jurisdiction that are compelling people to not adhere to these standard operating procedures?
No, some, apart from that, you see, some issues are understandable. But you see, if your issue is understandable, you should also be able to understand me. It is just a matter of understanding each other, that I am not stopping you from going to work just like that. But I am trying to make sure that the challenge we have is national. It is affecting everyone. The only way we can get out of it, the only way we can get away with people dying like locusts, is by, first of all, isolating ourselves. If we can't isolate ourselves, if we can't keep our way. I was in some slum where people call ghettos, and I was asking these boys, please, you are sharing everything. This is a good culture. It is a good culture to share. It is a good culture to socialize. But at the moment, it is a bad culture. Don't share your things that you take. Don't share. They share to the extent that they share Big G. That, yes, big
cut Maironji. Like when they're enjoying that, they use
they,
or
they share everything. But I was trying to tell them, this is not good for now.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Don't share. It is just you're sharing a problem. So that is how hard it is that we are even telling people, don't share what to eat. Don't share what you have. Don't share a shirt. Which is something hard to enforce. But at the end of the day, people understood, and people have understood. People are adhering to SOPs, but it is not yet enough. Today I am, but I need time to break even some of these things. So the challenge is, the challenge we have is you people, the elites. Because you have a car, you have money, you think you can do everything at will. You can go everywhere. You see, when we talked about Forest Mall, people who complained are you people. Because you think you have money, you can go to the hospital and treat yourself. You think you have money, you can buy the medicine you wish. But the problem is, there is someone who doesn't have the privilege you have. And we cannot afford to lock people inside the homes at the expense of those who can afford these services. And my challenge is, what do we need to do? We need to make sure that the 42 days, we can be able to let everyone go and fend for their families. But if we mishandle the process of the 42 days, it is likely that we can extend. But if we extend, to whose advantage or disadvantage?
It's a disadvantage.
It is to the disadvantage of someone who uses a border, someone who uses a taxi, and those two means of transport are now locked down. It is to someone who is working in Chiyembe, it is to someone who is working in the taxi park, it is to someone who is working in the city, and it is shut down. So if I, Anderson, I sleep on the job, I am depriving many Ugandans who are suffering, who need to get back to work, because I am just saying, Sarah, you drive to anywhere you want. Are you more? You keep working. And I think that is the worst service.
Indeed. Herbert Anderson Burora is the Deputy RCC for Nakawa. We also have the Executive Director for the Center for Constitutional Governance, Sarah Birete. Sarah, let's talk about how government has handled this COVID-19 pandemic, the consequent lockdown and measures. What is your whole perspective on how this government has handled the pandemic?
Yeah, good morning, viewers. I think it's important to underscore the fact that the infections have come down.
480 indeed.
Yes, I think the curve is reversing.
Indeed,
it's on the downside, both on the infections and the deaths. And we hear now there are free beds, free ICU beds, free high dependency beds. There is space now in the hospitals. So the lockdown has served to reverse the infection rates, but also to reduce the pressure on the health
sector.
Sector infrastructure. So we are making progress, and I wish to to commend the efforts of Bwanara DC going against the mafia, because when you talk about Forest Mall and ShopRite, you are dealing with the most privileged, the most connected, and the people who have power to make calls and say, why is this young man disturbing us?
If I get called, I can just pay some money.
Yes, I wish to really encourage him to keep what he's doing, because nobody is above the law.
Indeed.
If there are standard operating procedures, they should operate all, and there should be no exceptions. So really, that's commendable effort.
Indeed.
But going beyond that, he makes an important point on the privileged violating SOPs and keeping the vulnerable at home and more suffering. And we know the relief efforts really are a drop in the ocean.
Indeed.
There are relief efforts to help
501,107
people. That's really a drop in the ocean. Those who will receive the money, it is important it will help them. But how many other people are left out? If you have 8.3 million in poverty, if you go by the income inequality clusters, you have the new poor, you have the poor, you have the, and the floating class in middle income. All these people are vulnerable coupled together. Any day that they spend away from work, they slip away from the class of income they were in before. So we need to make sure that we all prevent the spread of COVID, get back our lives, and get to work.
Well, according to the government, they are saying that out of the 8.3 million poor people, only 501,000 are vulnerable. The rest are just poor. That's what they are saying. So they are going to be focusing on this group. But then when we reached out to Dr. Chris Mukiza, the boss of UBOS, Uganda Bureau of Statistics, he said these people might have been poor before the pandemic, but when we veered into the pandemic, the measures and so forth, these people might have likely fallen under the poverty line and are vulnerable right now. Do you think, as Sarah Birete, we should be maximizing the scope of the categories of whom we consider to be vulnerable in this regard?
Of course, if you have people living below $3,500 a day, adults.
Indeed.
Those are poor people. What do you do with this money? It can only give you a H-commando breakfast. It can't go beyond that. So, but, fortunately, some of these people under the poverty line live in rural areas, and some of them are farmers. Farmers are able to survive somehow in the lockdown.
But
when it comes to urban cities, it's really terrible. People have no means. If you have a family that depends on vending, for example, bananas on the streets or mangoes, The day they don't work or the day they don't earn, they go hungry. So that's the vulnerability. But the government has come out to say that they are looking at people who have been stopped from work. They are not looking at those who were not working before. So that's why they are looking at like borders, taxis in the categories of for relief. For relief, saloon, vendors, people who can't work because of lockdown. They are not looking at those who were not working before.
And they should.
Of course, they should, but what is their capacity to do that? First of all, I think that if it was possible,
Yes, Sarah.
the relief categories should be expanded because many people are going hungry. And once people go hungry in a lockdown that thrives on immunity of the people, once that nutrition, minimum nutrition standards are not met, then you have more people exposed to the virus.
Indeed.
Because of low immunity, because of, challenges of food security. So I think government, they are discussing the budget. They should increase that money for relief so that they are able to salvage other families that are going hungry.
Sarah, just like the first lockdown, we are getting news that this money is going to reach people. I got a call from Kasese and someone was telling me only individuals within the town councils and municipalities were able to get this money. The rich people within those town councils who knew someone who was registering the names. We are back to square one, just like the first lockdown, where even the food went to those who were already well off.
There are challenges with the distribution, finally. Identification of people, the local leaders were left out. I know where I stay today. Our LOC knows everybody, knows those that have capacity to feed, knows those that don't have capacity to feed. So there should have been a mix of technocrats, yes, to remove the politics, but also local leaders, especially LC1. They should have involved them in those categories. But those are challenges with the identification of relief. Challenges go beyond mere identification. If you look at our poverty map,
Indeed.
the North and the East have the highest poverty
They are.
in this country. But the majority of relief money has gone to Central and the West.
Indeed.
So is it really helping the most vulnerable or not? I think there is a challenge.
Let's also bring in Anderson
should be
Borora
addressed.
Habert, the Deputy RCC for Nakawa. Why leaders are focusing on individuals who are already well off. According to UBOS says majority of the poor people, the 8.3 million people who are poor, are within northern Uganda. Eastern Uganda has 2.8 million. Western Uganda, 1.5 million poor people. Central region here that we are focusing on has only 1 million poor people. Don't you think this is unfair to the people in the north where they could be vulnerable right now and do not have anything to eat? Even if I'm in agriculture, the weather patterns that are changing, they hit my garden. Now I'm grappling with crop failure, meaning I have nothing to eat. But the government believes I still have something at the farm. Anderson.
I think you are diverting the discussion by turning the vulnerable relief into a poverty alleviation package.
No, we are saying they were simply poor before the pandemic.
Yes.
But as we veered into the pandemic, they fell into the vulnerable bracket.
The question is, if you look at the demographic aspect of it, for example, who has even a pepper garden in Nakawa? Who has even, Sarah here doesn't even have a flower pot at home. That's to that extent.
Are you sure?
That if I don't ride my border, I have no any other fallback position. At least in Busoga or even the east, if I don't ride, you remember, was it Oloya?
Godfrey Oloya, the
one,
border rider in
yes,
Gulu, the first beneficiary.
He's riding a bus, a border in Gulu, but he has a garden at home. So if he can't ride the border, he can go back. At least you can pick greens and have lunch, something that is impossible. But even when it is impossible in Kampala, look at the population. Here, people, if I don't go to work, even if it were you, if you stopped from coming to work, your salary will not even be enough. Why? You're at home, everything is on your salary. So it means that if we looking at the issue of poverty alleviation, or the poverty curve versus the vulnerable curve, looking at the 42 days. We are not looking at even, it is not a program of 5 years.
Indeed.
That is going to roll out in 5 years. No, it is just for 42 days. Who is likely not to survive?
Yes.
Is it the one who has been poor before? Is it the one who has been poor but now cannot even go an extra mile of earning something to eat?
Yes.
So you prioritize. The issue here was to prioritize who to engage, who to assist. But still, even if we've prioritized that, it is still not enough. If you look at the superstructure of Kampala, you always call it a border economy. If you
Over
look,
1 million riders.
Oh, yeah, you have borders, you have taxis. Now talk about taxis. Since 18th, taxis are off the road.
So meaning if you're to put together
Imagine.
border riders and the taxi drivers, there are even more than
They're
the
even more
500,000
than
that we are
that. They're
targeting.
even more than that. They are not working. At least a border will disguise. Run here or even sneak out a passenger and ride a passenger. Get something. A taxi, a conductor
Well
is
marked.
at home, for heaven's sake. That person has no any other remedy. They have eaten all their Bibina savings. So if you don't run to their rescue, there is someone who can go out, but Sarah in Bushenyi can go and get a banana in the garden, or can even go to the neighbor and say, my bananas are still young, but let me take a kilo of beans. When they grow, I will reimburse, you know. There is someone who can survive in one way or the other. But you can go to a garden of sugarcane and pick a plantation of sugarcane, and pick one and eat and survive for a day. But yesterday I was talking to Luzira stage taxi people. We had to even devise means of how we can run to their rescue, even outside the arrangement of the vulnerable people. So the challenges here are really so far-fetching, and they are directly imposed on people, even when they are working by the way. We have had issues here of such people, the Batembei, you know. So if we are looking at the issue of the vulnerable people, let's widen the scope. Who are they? Why them? Why those that we have looked at? Why is it that the president's argument actually was even far-reaching, that we should go for those who are registered. We should go for those who have gone on to say, who have appreciated, and say, I asked the people who are the taxis, are you part of the Myoga? Have you registered for Myoga? They said no. I asked them why. Why haven't you registered with the Myoga? Yet this is something
look
for
at
you.
those pictures coming in on your screen. The officers carrying sticks and so forth. Do you think really heavy-handedness can achieve behavioral
But you
change?
see, my brother,
The heavy-handedness that we are seeing, shouldn't we just talk to these individuals to see how best they can change their
you
behaviors
are
in
talking
implementation
about,
of SOPs?
you are talking about this before a camera. But I have even seen where a moderator cannot moderate between just 4 people. 4 people in a room like this, and they end up fighting or insulting each other. Don't look at enforcement as a piece of cake on the table. Enforcement is really hard. There is no way you are going to say that I am going to talk to someone who is not willing to listen. Because those are 2 things. I should be able to talk to you when you're willing to listen.
Have you found out why
First,
I'm not willing to listen?
Yes, I am telling you.
Children are left at home, do not have anything
The
to eat.
challenges we are going through
Yes,
are
Anderson.
personal. They are not even now national.
I hear
They
you.
are personal. I am personally challenged because I have a problem with you. That if I am sick, you are going to get sick. By the time we went into a lockdown, our death curve was rising. It had reached 50 per day. You have
1,000 cases per day.
1,000. No, deaths. Deaths. I'm not talking about cases. Deaths.
The deaths
It
were-
would be so worse if we reached at 1,000 deaths per day. And how would we deal with that?
Indeed.
No way. There is no way we could have an excuse of saying that instead of sending people at home and find means to survive, now let's go for mass graves.
The reason why
the
reason why we are denouncing heavy-handedness is simply because it will work during the lockdown. They will stay home. But when you reopen, that's when they will throw all their guards down and be like, okay, the lockdown is now over. Maybe COVID-19 is also gone. And then boom.
You see,
they won't be wearing face masks, there won't be social distancing, and we'll be registering the same deaths, the same infections that we were seeing before. So we believe talking to the individuals on what to do is best.
There are two issues to consider.
Yes, Anderson.
One, should we consider welfare or should we put lives at stake? If you have hope to see tomorrow, we can fight through that because I have hope to see tomorrow.
We should look at welfare.
But if we are to discuss welfare, we are going to lose the battle on the onset.
Because if you look at welfare, they stay home.
Yes.
They have no reason to leave their homes to go make a living.
But the issue is, if we are to bury them, if every day I am here to say, I assume I am Honorable Dr. Chris Bariomosi.
ICT.
Hello country, we are here to tell you we have gazetted a mass grave for this district in this place. We have gazetted another mass grave in this place.
Why not gazette a market that is offering free food to these individuals so that they can stay in their houses?
Listen to this. And we have also procured 50 tractors or excavators to help you in digging graves.
Why not procure 50 tractors of Matoke from Barara and then bring them to the areas where people are grappling and give them the food so that they stay in their homes?
Would that be possible?
Anderson, we're talking about welfare. When you are focusing on their welfare, they do not leave their homes because they have the food. Let me also bring in
before you go, there was a discussion here a while ago where one said that they left work because they are working for 50K per day or 50K. You remember that 50K thing? You see, Uganda cannot be rich or richer than its citizens.
All right, thank you very much, Anderson Gomora. He is the Deputy RCC of Nakawa. We need to balance this conversation, sir. Let's also bring in Sarah Birete. Sarah Birete, do you also buy into the analogy that more vulnerable people are within the urban areas and those in the villages actually have something to eat? Even though, statistics prove otherwise, that people who might have had something to eat before the pandemic now do not have. Climate change is also to blame. My garden, largely was scorched. There is no food left. Government is thinking I have food. They're focusing on the people within the town councils and municipalities or the urban areas. So where does that leave the other people? Do you also buy into that analogy that urban people are badly off than those within the rural settings because of agriculture?
There are two challenges with the rural population. One is effects of climate change, but also land ownership and the land tenure policies in the country. So you have extreme vulnerable people in the rural areas. If you don't own land, you are at the mercy of people who own big chunks of land and can give you a piece of land to do farming.
Indeed.
Or you are at the mercy. There are people who permanently work in other people's gardens, and at the end of the day, they are given food to go and prepare 1 meal a day. I see them in my village. And I come from Bushenyi, which is generally a middle income district compared to other rural areas. So there are people in the villages who are extremely vulnerable. And they live on hand to mouth.
Indeed.
But also I think if you look at the chances of survival, in the village you can survive. The neighbors, but more than in the urban where everybody enters their houses, gates and close. So there are those challenges. But away from that, when RCC said we have 1 million border riders in Kampala metropolitan. I don't know the number of tax operators. It could be also tending to 1 million.
Or 500,000.
Or 500,000. And you are only targeting 500,000 in the relief package.
It doesn't even cover the border riders.
It doesn't cover border. You are not looking at taxis. You are not looking at vendors. You are not looking at street children. You are not looking at saloon operators. So
single mothers.
How do you single out which border person to benefit from this money? That's why I was saying that this money really is a drop in the ocean. The government, even with the categories they are
How do we
targeting,
know this family is run by a single mother?
yes,
Such
even with the
questions.
categories that they are targeting now, it is nothing. But also there are so many categories that are excluded from the current target. So even the remaining, we are halfway lockdown, 27 days. The remaining days, they are really families that cannot cross over. People who have been starving, we know you can starve for 1, 2, 3 weeks, but how far can we stretch these vulnerable people? So I think really government, as they debate budgets, they need to debate relief money and roll it out very fast. Because for 3 weeks, we are still talking of half performance. I saw the Right Honorable Prime Minister yesterday, who went to Parliament without a statement as per rules, or written statement as per rules of Parliament
Yes,
provide. And she said there are 200,000. So even the speed at which they are working. And the challenge is involving leaving the work of technocrats, work that should be done by local leaders. So they need to involve LC1. They know their residents. LC1s know their residents.
So even the 500,000 people who were targeted or earmarked to receive this money, some of them, even before the deadline yesterday, upon the extension, they hadn't received this money in that regard, meaning even the small number we were targeting did not even receive the money.
Yes.
What do you make of this, Sarah?
Of course, there are levels. There is incompetence, and the procedure they've used. You cannot exclude local leaders and think a town crack knows a family that is likely to sleep hungry. They don't. But the LC1 chairman knows. The LC1 defense secretary knows. They are in direct contact with the people on a day-to-day basis.
Sarah, do you believe the most effective way of dealing with behavioral change or making people to adhere to these SOPs is to focus on their welfare? If I give someone food that is enough, they will keep in their homes. Right now, people are leaving their homes simply because they want to go look for food, and that's why they're not adhering to the SOPs. Do you think focusing on welfare right now, rather than the heavy-handedness of security, beating people into submission, is the only way to go?
You know,
To achieve behavioral change?
You can achieve behavior change in 2 ways. One is the social protection measures, which includes relief, treatment. I've been hearing, village health teams. Personally, I've never met in my life. I've never met a member of a village health team. I don't know how they work. I don't know how they reach people. But where they work and they are able to help, well and good.
Because you don't live in a village.
But she does research. Go ahead, Sarah. That's how we know what is happening in Kasese, where people are dying of hunger, even though food is cheap right there. Kasese is a rural area, but they still get food from Food Portal.
Yes. So for social protection, you need to make sure you save lives and livelihoods. People are able to eat, people are able to receive emergency service when they need it.
So they won't have to leave their homes and break the rules.
Second principle for achieving behavior change is through sensitization, mass sensitization. We see less communication coming through. I know that the Ministry of ICT National Guidance is trying. The president does most of the sensitization, by the way. When he speaks, people pick the messages. I remember the first time we registered the COVID death. My children were up in arms. Hey, but the president told us, how can we die? So yes, the president is doing, I think, like 80% of the sensitization. Though now he has, the frequency of his addresses have also reduced. I don't know why, compared to the first, to the first phase. But he does most of the sensitization. So this Ministry of Health, ICT, they need to target effective communication for behavior change. Today, we are likely to achieve a situation where people wear a mask because they've seen a policeman.
Indeed. That's what we are talking about.
Behavior change. Behavior change means that I should wear my mask the way I wear my dress
because
before I leave my house, because I have to dress like that.
Anderson Burora, your submission, your reaction to her submission, brother.
No, I think, first of all, the issue of COVID is collective responsibility.
I hear you on that.
and it is not even something that should be subjected to enforcement. I shouldn't be on the road telling people to social distance.
Indeed.
In the first place. I shouldn't be beating you into submission.
Indeed.
And I think when we reach at that level, that's where we need to sympathize and understand that sometimes some things are not done as a wish, but sometimes there are very limited options left. To give an example is, why would I be fighting with someone to put on a mask? Why should
When
I...
someone just died yesterday of
and
COVID-19.
we've had all of these cases. Why should I be fighting with someone to stay at home? Even when they have had cases whereby even bodies can't leave hospitals because of bills.
Indeed.
Why would I be fighting with someone who is fighting to go and make money in this pandemic, even when they know that money is not enough to bring back your life?
Meaning you're still fighting with them because you did not give them information in the beginning.
See, let me tell you this.
And that's where we are.
My brother, if someone...
Sensitization, that's what we are
I
talking
will
about.
go back to the first lockdown.
Go ahead.
If you had a bar, or if you were a drunkard person, or if you drank, and you spent almost 4 months without going to a bar at will, you were affected. If your children did not go to school
Affected
up
or
to
saved?
now,
Go ahead.
you were affected. So that now alone sent you signals of what impact the pandemic came with. If you are a church goer and you have not gone to church for almost a year, and you have missed church, you must have had enough impact of this pandemic. If you have been using transport, today you can't jump on a border, you can't enter a taxi, you can't see a bus anywhere. It is at home. This is enough to give anyone at any point, at any corner of this country, a signal of what the pandemic is. And if you had not even gotten enough information, you have not buried your relatives, you have not attended weddings of your relatives, you have not been able to socially gather and talk to your friends, I don't think there is no one who has not interfaced with that disruption. I don't think that whoever has interfaced with that disruption has not gotten information. So the issue of getting information is one thing. If there is anyone who has never heard of President Museveni, he has heard of him in this pandemic, because at least he has been on every radio, he has been on every TV.
They are still there in Kasese. I'm getting information that do not know that President Museveni is the president of this country.
True,
It has been in power for close to 40 years.
But I think they have been affected in one way or the other.
People who do not know
pandemic.
what implementation of
And
SOPs means,
that,
or even what SOPs are.
If that person has not interfaced with those things, that person is not in any way affected by the lockdown or even this pandemic, because they have not come face to face. So the issue of information, the issue of sensitization is no longer part of the discussion. At least
in a pandemic,
in a pandemic, it is
yes,
continuous.
it is continuous. But why we are saying that it is continuous,
behavior change.
it is that at least everywhere you go, there is a discussion about corona.
Here's why we think information dissemination is important. The first lockdown was very effective. Then we reopened. Then the people went lax again. They dropped their guard because there was no information that was being disseminated on a daily basis. So many people felt like COVID-19 is not here. So they dropped their guard. Here we are in the second lockdown. Things are working so well. Everyone is at home. Cases have gone down. But when we reopen, since we are not disseminating information on a daily or recurrent basis, people will drop their guard again.
The challenge we have is we need also to learn and understand what kind of pandemic we are dealing with.
Yes, Anderson.
We need to understand that we are dealing with a virus, that we will defeat it to some extent, but it will come back, it will reorganize and come back. Because if some countries have reached the fourth wave,
Is important.
some countries have reached the fourth wave, others have actually now gone through it completely. We are just on the second wave. We shall have 3, we shall have 4. Supposedly we may not even go to that extent. So information we need is
Before
that
I
let's
let you go,
adhere.
Anderson, purposes of information, just give us an update on how things are going within Nakawa as the deputy RCC. Are you getting any complaints from vulnerable people who are saying, I did not receive any money, I was on the list, I was omitted, they're putting richer people, they're putting dead people on the lists? Are you also getting these complaints within your jurisdiction?
Yeah, but we sorted the issue of but the biggest challenge that you people are not understanding, actually that is delaying the pandemic, the Nabanja money, we use the system. Using a system, it means Sarah double registered his number. He registered in Bukoto, where he works as a border. He also registered at his village where he stays. Double registration. Now, if you double register, the system automatically discards you. It puts you out of the system.
I see.
Now that is a delay. 2, we are manually entering this data into the system. Manually means some people even did not even register. Their names is Sarah, but he has his telephone number registered in Anderson's name, but he got a NIN number later. So he has a different NIN number, a different telephone number, a different name in registration.
All right.
They don't match. Yet for you to go through, your NIN number, your telephone number, your names must be matching. And this is the information we need to give to the people to correct some of their information, and they match. Otherwise, even this, there are people who may end up not getting this money, yet they were registered.
All right,
And
thank you very much, Anderson Burora. We've largely
emphasis.
run out of time, but it would be unfair not to give Sarah Birete a few seconds to actually give us a few pointers on what she thinks government should do when they are expediting these interventions, but also make sure people are not dying of poverty. Yes, government is putting in place lockdown measures to reduce the numbers of COVID-19, and it's indeed working. But what else can we do to ensure that in the long run, people are not dying of poverty, Sarah?
You know, first as we go through lockdown, government should not give people a chance to choose how to die. Either die of COVID or die of poverty.
Important message.
Yes, I was listening to the RDC, laboring to say, we need to ask ourselves, why do people have the need to come to town? If you are a head of a household, yes, how do you stay home when your children are looking at you and you have nothing to feed them? It is not possible. So we need to make sure that people are enabled to stay home. Because I'm sure nobody would want to come to get infected with COVID. But what are the chances? What are the reasons pushing people on the streets? Government needs to address those.
All right. Thank you very much, Sarah Birete. She is the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. She was not alone. The Deputy RCC for Nakawa is here, and that is none other than Herbert Anderson Burora. Gentlemen and lady, thank you very much for your submissions. Let's now take you to Serena. Yes, in the gardens, we do have Stephen Imbide, who is ready to talk to Abbas Mutumba on the efforts to fill an empty Iyala seat. We will be right back with that conversation, largely at the Serena Gardens. Keep it here.